Hello and welcome to the Embodied Union podcast. I'm Lindsay.
I'm Charlie.
And today we're going to be speaking around self-responsibility in relationship.
I love this topic and I feel like I get in trouble when I talk about it sometimes.
People are really triggered by your comments and posts and things like that.
I had a client today as well. She told me she loves me and I'm really direct. I'm super direct with, you must take responsibility for your stuff. I'm always telling people like it's a you thing, and not everyone wants to hear that.
Well, because I work with men, I just so see that we try and take responsibility, and we definitely don't take responsibility. My experience is like something about the feminine or women find it really hard to be held responsible for something or to want to take responsibility for their part in it. I don't know. I see it for you being like, it's a real attraction point of mine to you that I really love that about you, that you're so willing, and it makes me even want to be more willing as well.
What I want to just add there though is I'm not sure if it's a woman-man thing, and it's like, yes, I get a lot of women who struggle with the responsibility piece, but I think it's a human thing. Like, when a human has been victimized, then there's often less capacity to step into responsibility. And I really want to be clear right now, because often this is where I can get in trouble. There's a big difference between someone who has been the victim of hideous trauma and someone who carries a victim identity. So I have so much compassion. I have compassion for both, but we really want to be compassionate for people who have been the victim of hideous stuff. And that person, as I have so much compassion, and what happened to you is not your fault, and it is your responsibility to do something about it, to heal it, to have a different experience as an adult. And so when I say things like that, man or woman, if they have big trauma, often that can really hit up against something, because they really feel like they've been done wrong. And it's not to say that they haven't.
Yeah, a lot of the time we have had big things happen, and it's like the objective subjective victim, right? It's like when you're a victim to something, you might not even be aware at the time that it's happening that you're a victim to it. It's when you start to identify with it. You acknowledge and go, oh, I am a victim, and now I'm going to take that role on and be stuck there.
I think that's like often people unconsciously take on the role of the victim, which then perpetuates into all the areas of life, right? So they start, some people, not everyone, I won't speak in absolute terms, but you can become a victim of your circumstance. It's like, I'm a victim of the weather. It's raining, so I'm not going to work out today, and today is ruined. I'm a victim of the weather. Or my partner is in a mood because he didn't sleep well for whatever reason, and now I can't concentrate at my work, with my work. I'm now a victim to my partner. And it's like this energy, this victim identity of like feeling at the effect of life's circumstance and people, and it's a really disempowering place to be. When someone is at the victim of everything, it's a very hard space to create change.
Yes.
And there's attachment to being a victim.
Oh yeah.
There's big attachment to the victim identity.
What's the truth? Well, I won't interrupt anymore.
No, I'm curious to know what you mean by that, but what I'm saying is like the attachment to think about a child who was neglected, severely neglected growing up. That adult now has a victim identity and finds a lot of things to complain about and whinge about, because they're still trying to meet that part of themselves that was neglected. So how can they get attention and care and validation? By complaining, by being a victim. Oh, it's not fair, save me, fix me. So I think like people who carry this heaviness, this victim identity, it's definitely a learned way of being.
Totally.
But we want to give people awareness around like what they're doing so they can make different choices, more empowered choices.
Yeah, and I think that's what it is, like giving some framework around it. Like one of the first things in personal development that I learned was around your story and like what happened, like actually what happened and then your story as to what happened. I remember doing this when I did Landmark Education's work, and it was like, oh, you know, it's like we could both see something happen in front of us and we both make it mean something completely different, and we can also make it mean something about ourselves. So there's like what's happened, and then there's what's actually happened, and then there's our story of what happened and the meaning we made and gave to it. And one of the things that I went on to learn around was just even the drama triangle for people. Was like the drama triangle gives people the understanding that there's, in any drama that we create, there's the perpetrator, the rescuer, and the victim. And if we fall into victim all the time, it's like we're perpetuating our own drama. We're creating this unease, this environment that isn't quite right, that means that we can't flourish, you know, and it's our way to stay stuck there as well, you know. And we either do it in relationship or we do it on our own. Like, that's the thing about the drama triangles, you don't actually need anyone else. You can create
your own drama, the star of the show.
You just create it all yourself, you know, like, oh God, it's actually me. I'm the one perpetuating this. And, you know, we're going to get into it, but like how we move out is like awareness, ownership, self-responsibility.
And like this can be super confronting, especially for someone who has, again, been the victim of hideous trauma, and it's like, here I am saying, you must take responsibility for the triggers that you now feel as an adult, and it's like, whoa.
I'm not ready for that.
Not ready for that. I want to look at that. Like, I'm actually still carrying mad. Like, I'm still carrying, like, they did that to me. I was perpetrated on. I know one of the sentences that really gets me in trouble is when I say that in the past, you were perpetrated on, there was a perpetrator, but as an adult, because you're continuing to suffer, you have now become your own perpetrator.
Yes.
And I know that is a triggering statement. But what I mean by it is, again, what happened to you is not your fault, but the triggers that are still dysregulating your system, and as an adult and falling into fight and flight and emotional baggage that you bring to relationship, that is your responsibility. And if you are continuing to fall into trigger based on what happened to you in the past, this person who's no longer in your life, this perpetrator, you're creating that dysregulation based on what happened.
Yes. Yeah. And I know that, you know, and I've embodied that as well. As if we do, I think the thing to notice about this is if we don't do this, if we don't take responsibility for our part of what we bring to our world, to our experience, to our life, then we are actually powerless. And then that creates so much extra longer term suffering. So it's like, okay, it happened. I am going to acknowledge it. I need to accept these parts of myself, or accept that it happened, so I can at least start to look at it, that how it may impact me, how it's created this core material, this stuff inside of me that's like really guiding my life. It really guides my choices around who I feel comfortable with, what jobs I feel safe in.
Who I'm willing to date.
Exactly.
The behavior I'm willing to tolerate.
Yes. And if, you know, you start to become more aware of this and responsible for it, so much more power, so much more choice. And I know for men, they talk about, oh, I want freedom, I want freedom, I want freedom. It's freedom to choose, and choice through knowledge, and choice through responsibility, and self responsibility creates all that power.
So I think the first part, it's like, for anyone listening, it's having awareness, and it's actually owning the part of you that potentially is falling into victim. It's having the awareness to actually be a bit objective to your own triggered reactivity, like who do I become when I'm triggered, like, and why and how, and like how is that presenting now, and how can I create some space from that so I can actually make a more empowered decision around how I want to show up.
Yeah, because I think that's what happens when we get triggered, is it's almost as frustrating that it keeps happening. Like, we're not really aware of it until it starts, we bring some awareness in of like, that's that thing I do. every time you walk off mid-sentence, it's like,
I shut down a little bit.
yeah, that triggers me in some way, and I make it mean something about myself. And then by making it mean something about myself, I either act a different way or believe something about myself. And then if I don't tend to that part that's hurting, I make it your responsibility to fix.
Yes, and this is where I think so many couples are at, and where I was at for so long. It's like I have this, I'm getting triggered, I'm making a whole bunch of meaning, I'm buying into my own story,
Bullshit.
and then my own bullshit, and then I make it your responsibility, which essentially means I am making my partner my parent. You now have to caretake for my big emotions. And for a really long time, I really was like, yeah, and you should. It is your responsibility because you did this to me. You made me feel like this. You have to fix me, save me, soothe me. And I was really sure that I was like on a high horse with it. Like, you've created my upset.
Yes.
And like what I have learned and what has changed the game is that how I feel is you can't actually make me feel anything. You cannot open the top of my head and pour in dysregulation. I can only create it based on the meaning I make around your behavioral language. So you might do something that activates a wound that I am already carrying long before I met you, and that is my responsibility. This does not mean that I have to condone shit behavior.
No.
If you're treating me like shit, then you are not in alignment with me, and this relationship I get to have discernment. But if we're having like pretty typical relational triggers and it's my emotional baggage that's coming up because you didn't come and kiss me on the eyelids the minute you came home from jiu-jitsu, that's mine to regulate. Safety is an inside job. And I can't, like, I say that and I'm like, yeah, it's true. And I tried so hard to make my partner create safety for me. And that's a lose-lose.
It really is. It really is. And fighting for that, like, yeah, not making our partner be our caretaker or caretaking those parts of us. It's like, it seems so real when it's happening that when we're so sure and so right about the other person being wrong or doing something that we don't like, it's like we're convinced, like we've got all the evidence that we need that it's you're the reason. And the way that this can play out is you might go, the way you're treating me, I don't appreciate it. I'm out of this relationship. But guess what? Next relationship rolls around and it's like that person did exactly what the last person did. And then all of a sudden you start to realize that you're the common denominator. You then have to start taking responsibility that's like, oh, I chose the bear. Like maybe you should choose better men so you don't have to go out and choose the bear, right? It's this aspect of, it's me. That's a hard one. That's really hard.
It is, but like the consequence of making your partner your parent and caretake for your big emotions is it's actually damaging to the relationship. Like my little girl part really wants to do that. It wants to buy in. It wants you to look after me and like make it all better. But the woman in me suffers when I'm acting like that, because if you're my parent, you're not actually my intimate partner, and it actually like it damages the polarity. It damages the sexual connection and the flow of energy between us, because even though I might love you and you're saving me all the time and it's like, yeah, you like I need you, I don't actually want you because I'm in the energy of needing you to be the caretaker.
And I think of that, like if the men that are listening here that are maybe struggling to take responsibility for some of these things, is just remember, if you're not caretaking and looking after your own inner child, little boy dysregulation, and you're making your partner do that, she does not find that attractive on some level. So it's like
on many levels.
if your love life isn't how you really ultimately want it to be, I know this seems so counterproductive and it probably will trigger nearly every man, is like, what are you not taking responsibility for in this? What's your part to play in this?
Well, that's the thing. It's like when there's lack of sex or lack of intimacy, that's actually rarely the problem.
Yeah.
It's like there's something else going on, and often it can be a couple who have fallen into the trap of just really letting their 3-year-old inner child run the show.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's all about relationship house cleaning. So it's like, how are you able to clean this up? How are you able to bring your triggers to your partner, not when you're actually triggered, but actually bringing it up, self-revealing to your partner, whatever it is, that then creates connection and understanding and the wanting to lean in together, rather than every time I bring up what's going on for me, it gets worse. And it's like, yeah, because the way that you're bringing it up is you are triggered, you are blaming, you're making it your partner's fault because you're not taking responsibility. If I come to you with responsibility of like, I'm really triggered because that brings up my stuff and that's mine, and I don't actually need anything from you.
I would love to like even simplify that example even more, because I think it's so beautiful, because I often have the experience of you and I, say we fall into a trigger, which doesn't happen often, but when it does, we take some space, and then I get there's two possibilities, right? Say I'm sitting in my room, we've taken space, you come into my room an hour later, you sit down on my bed, and you say some comment that's like, are you over it yet? Or I really don't like the way that you spoke to me, or something that still feels like a make wrong or an attack, or just
doesn't feel good. Then I have the experience, and this is the actual experience I have with you. We've taken some space, you come into my room, you sit on the end of my bed, and you say, what I want to acknowledge is, and you list out the things that you, like where you dropped the ball. You own it. You own where you weren't responsible. You own what was activated. So it's like, babe, when you didn't come and kiss me on the eyelids, it triggered that part of me that feels like maybe you don't care, or like I'm not enough, or you're owning the deeper truth. Yes.
And when you come and sit on the end of my bed and you just own your deeper truth, I immediately soften. I don't feel attacked. I don't feel made wrong. It's like, acknowledgement, ownership. Let's repair. Love you.
Yeah, responsibility is super sexy.
It is, and it's really a skill that gets to be practiced. And like, I might mention my masterclass here, because on Monday I'm going to teach couples the art of self-revealing, and to be self-responsible, and to create and to have this level of ownership. It's a skill that you want to know.
Oh yeah.
It's a skill that you want to know. It really is a way that you can turn every single trigger into a healing opportunity.
Yeah, literally fast tracking your relationship. Yeah, and healing it at the same time. It's like, gets to be better and better. It's wild.
And I wonder like how many people have actually ever thought like their triggers are actually healing opportunities. You know, they're little hands in the air that are saying, please turn around and look at me and learn something about yourself, rather than just projecting it outward and making the other wrong for the feeling that you have stirring in your body.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's not what we get taught, it's not what we get modeled. It doesn't feel natural, because it's like anything that's not right is usually we deem it as outside of ourselves. It's happening to me, something else is up, I'm fine, you're not, so you must be like, I was fine. And then all of a sudden you've come in and you're doing X, Y, Z. It's like,
and now I'm da-da-da.
Trigger meeting trigger.
Trigger meeting trigger.
And it's, how can we take responsibility for that? How can we own that in those moments? Because to me, it's not that we never get triggered. It's not that we never have an argument or ever feel dysregulated. It's how quickly can we come back? And so we have to have a plan. We can't not have a plan when it comes to our conflict plan in relationship. It's like, oh, that is a skill. This is how we do it. And if we're noticing that we're bringing stuff up and it's being met with no responsibility, or it feels like the other person's defensive, it's like, well, maybe we should be setting this up more regularly. So it's actually something that we both coming to knowing full well. It's like, it's something that we set up, something powerful, rather than just, we need to have a chat. Because you know how that goes. It's just like it feels sprung on the other person's.
The other way it usually goes is it's just dumped. It's just like da-da-da, like an explosion of, I feel like this, you did this, and like the other person is not ready to hold that. So it's like, conflict plan is important. Actually taking it seriously, to sit down and have these conversations where there's kind of some rules to it. So you know how to listen properly, you know how to hold space properly, and you actually know how to share in a way that keeps your partner on your team, because you're being so responsible and owning your own experience.
Yeah, and I think the part with this too is like when we really do embody self-responsibility, it's like we're more sovereign, we're more ourselves. And I think if people could only understand that more, I think is like relationship is the sum of the two. So it's like if we're both taking responsibility and we're both doing our own internal work together, then it makes the relationship better. It's not 1 + 1 = 2. It's like 1 + 1 = 11. Like it gets so much better because of that. And it does. It takes the two to both be doing it, you know? So it's like, how are we learning this and growing as a couple and taking this responsibility? Because it makes everything better.
So I guess if a couple is listening and they're like, okay, how do we start? Like, first of all, it's wanting to learn. It's having some awareness, self-awareness, self-inquiry, understanding your own flavor of triggered reactivity and like what that is for you. The awareness piece is important. Doing your own internal work and having the capacity to self-regulate. You need to be able to self-regulate what's coming up for you so that you don't need to go dump it on your partner or make your partner responsible. It's like co-regulation is a gift that partnership offers, but you don't want to rely on it at the expense of knowing how to self-regulate.
Yes.
So self-awareness, self-regulation, these two things then prime you for coming together and co-regulating, self-revealing and sharing your stuff and your triggers in a way that's very much like, self-responsible, vulnerable, and with ownership.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of, if we were to give it a structure, that would kind of...
Yeah, and the end result being like better connection. It's like if I can see you, if I can see you more clearly and you can see me more clearly, then we can connect better.
Yes.
If you're Duplo and I'm Lego, we don't go together very well. It's kind of clunky.
Yeah.
So it's like I really want to be in this teamwork and this synergy of like we're doing this dance of relating, like we're making it work.
That's the thing. I often get asked the question around like two people's stuff and like how do we do it, like, or if each individual has like a lot of stuff to work through, like can it work? It's like if both are willing to come and learn new relationship skills, both are willing to put their swords down, both are willing to use relationship for growth, it's unbelievable what this journey can be like. It's so transformative, and it's not this heavy journey of always having to do the work.
No.
It's just we know how to move through the inevitable tension more productively, so we actually spend way more time in joyness and lightness and intimacy and ecstasy and pleasure, and it's like there's no other way to do relationship.
And if you both really are in that reactivity and it feels like it's too much, then Charlotte works with women one-on-one and I work with men one-on-one, and sometimes, and we work together with couples, but I think sometimes that's maybe what it needs. Like sometimes we're that dysregulated and our partner is triggering up our stuff that much and we really can't see it any other way. It can be really supportive is to like learn about this stuff and heal it, you know, with a trained professional.
Learn how to resource yourself. That's the thing. Like when we teach couples how to have these kinds of conversation, we've already taught them the groundwork of how to manage their own nervous systems, because that has to come first. We have to be dealing with the safety pieces so that we can sit down and really be open and willing to see it differently.
Yeah.
If we're too in our stuff, then we can't see. Like you said, if I'm just so triggered, I actually can't even see you. All I can see is my story that I'm projecting onto you and my hurt and whatever the emotion is. I'm not actually in contact with you. I'm in contact with my hurt, scared, frustration. So, yeah.
Yeah, the certainty doesn't create any curiosity.
If I'm certain you've done something to me, I'm not curious at all. And if I'm not curious, I'm not present, then I'm actually not in relationship with you. I'm in relationship with my own hurt parts.
Yeah, and it's hard to be in relationship with someone that's stuck in their hurt parts.
Which most people are, honestly.
Yeah, and that's why we're here. So thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's episode.
On Monday, I'm just going to mention it one more time, I have a free training. It's for women, but anyone really can come, and I'm teaching you the art of self-revealing, which is essentially the crux of what we just talked about, how to bring your triggers to your partner in a way that actually gets you what you want. So if you want the link for that, it's free. You can register through my Instagram. I'm Charlie S. Hannah. Or send me a message through the podcast and I'll make sure that you get what you need. It's going to be a really great conversation.
Yep, and if you're not following Embodied Union already, make sure that you are. Go and click it on the link and give it a follow. And we'll see you guys next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Love you, Critter.
I love you.